Every parent, from humans to animals, shares an unwavering devotion and love for their children. This bond is universal, transcending species, cultures, and even circumstances. By recognizing this shared connection, we open our hearts to a deeper empathy and understanding of the world around us. Join us as we explore a story that beautifully captures the essence of this unbreakable bond. The village of Ibonko, nestled close to a great Nigerian forest, had long existed in a fragile balance with the wild creatures that shared the land. The elders told stories of how, in the old times, the villagers and the chimpanzees lived as distant neighbors, never friends, but never foes. The chimps watched the humans with cautious eyes, entering farms only after harvests, and the humans respected the strength and intelligence of the chimps, knowing that their world was separate, yet intertwined. But times had changed. Pale-skinned traders with strange tongues came to the village in numbers. They offered wealth in exchange for the young, baby chimpanzees to be sold to their zoos in the foreign lands. The first few sales were quiet, unnoticed by most. A baby chimp here, another there. The payments were in foreign currencies. The villagers, most of them poor, saw it as an opportunity too tempting to resist. And soon, what began as rare incidents turned into a dark, growing trade. The chimps, once distant and indifferent, began to feel the sting of human cruelty. Among the villagers, Okon was the most notorious. A skilled hunter, he had always been respected for his ability to track and capture the creatures of the forest. But something in him had changed. The lure of easy money, of the foreign currency that could buy so much, including status, had darkened his heart. Okon had sold more baby chimps than anyone else. He knew the routes the chimps took, the habits of their families, and how to snatch a baby from its mother's arms without a trace. The foreign trader Fredo paid him handsomely. With each sale, Okon grew wealthier, more arrogant, and more reckless. But the chimps had been watching. Okuma, the elder chimp, whose wisdom was revered by his kind, had long observed the humans with a calm that belied the sorrow he felt. The loss of their young had devastated the chimps, but Okuma had restrained them. He had hoped that the humans would stop. But Okon's greed only grew. The final straw came one fateful day, when Okon took yet another baby chimp. The cry of the mother, echoing through the forest, pierced the hearts of all who heard it. This time, there would be no more waiting. Okuma's patience had run out. That night, under the cloak of darkness, the chimps gathered in the heart of the forest. Their eyes gleamed with a mix of grief and fury, and Okuma, usually the voice of reason, now spoke with a cold determination. The humans had stolen their children enough. Now, they would feel the same loss. Tooth for tooth. Child for child. Every parent loves the child equally, human or chimp. In the village, Okon returned home late, his bag full of the money from Fredo. He tossed them onto the table, boasting to his wife of his latest catch. He spoke of plans to build a bigger house, to buy more land. His 4-year-old son, Anyati, lay sleeping soundly in the next room after school and play, unaware of the shadows moving through the evening. The chimps came swiftly, silently. Okuma led them, his eyes fixed on Okon's home. They moved through the village in their numbers, slipping between huts, not minding anything. When they reached Okon's house, they stood. Okon looked through the window and saw the crowd of chimpanzees coming and retreated into his to watch, unaware of their mission. In front of Okon's door, Okuma made a wild sound and the animal forced Okon's door open. Lo and behold, they found Anyati's small form curled up in sleep. Okuma's hand reached out, and with a tenderness that belied the anger in his heart, he lifted the boy from his bed. Anyati woke suddenly and screamed. The chimps moved with terrifying speed. Before Okon could raise his gun, one of them knocked it from his hands. Another swiped his machete away. They did not strike to kill, they simply disarmed him, stripping him of the tools that had made him a hunter, a taker of lives. Okon tried to fight back, but the chimps overwhelmed him. Their blows left him bruised and bloodied. But it was the look in Okuma's eyes that struck the deepest wound. It was not hatred that Okon saw in those dark eyes, it was justice. The chimps left Okon alive, beaten and broken. He staggered back to the village, empty-handed, the weight of his sins heavy on his shoulders. Anyeti's mother had been running wild in the village, the chimpanzees. They took Anyeti. My son. They have carried him into the forest. When Okon came back, the elders had already gathered. Other hunters grabbed their machetes and guns and headed to the forest, vowing to find Anyeti. They won't take that from mere monkeys, they said. But even as they set out into the forest, a sense of dread weighed on many. Deep down, they knew how hard it would be to fight the large chimps that fight elephants and break hunters' guns. In the forest, the hunters now felt like strangers with fear. The trees seemed to close in on them, the underbrush thick and unyielding. They called out for Anyeti, but the only answer was the whisper of leaves and the distant cries of animals. They returned without Anyeti. This is your doing, Okon, the chief elder said, his eyes filled with disappointment. You have taken their children for years, and now they have taken yours. The village was silent, watching Okon with pity and fear. They had admired his success, his wealth, but now they saw the price that had been paid. The elders knew that this was no longer just about Okon. It was about the village children. The chimps may come for more. The people who had sold baby chimps started moving their kids away from the village. Okon, desperate and broken, made a vow. He will find Fredo. If he can return the baby chimp, perhaps they will return Anyeti. But Fredo, the foreign trader, had vanished. Okon searched for weeks, traveling from village to village, but there was no trace of the man or the chimps he had taken. Each day that passed without finding Fredo deepened Okon's guilt. He had once been the village's pride, but now, he was its shame. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Anyeti remained with the chimps. At first, he was afraid, but over time, they cared for him. They fed him with fruits, and treated him as one of their own. Anyeti, once a boy of the village, became a child of the wild. He learned to climb, to move with the silence of the trees, and to understand the language of the animals. Though he missed his parents, he began to see the chimps as his family. Months passed. The village had almost given up hope. Okon, worn down by guilt and the weight of his failure, sat alone one evening, staring into the fire. He had lost everything, his wealth. His pride, his son and Fredo had not visited again. But as the fire crackled and the evening grew quiet, he heard a rustle in the trees. He looked up and saw a figure emerge from the shadows. It was Anyeti. His son had returned, but the boy who stood before him was different. His eyes, once wide with innocence, now held the wisdom of the forest. He moved with the grace of the chimps, his clothes torn and his hair wild. Okuma watched silently from the edge of the clearing. Anyeti, Okon whispered, his voice breaking. He ran toward his son, but Anyeti stood still, his gaze steady and calm. The villagers gathered to rejoice. The chief elder understood the depth of what had happened. The animals have spoken, he said quietly. They have restored what was taken, probably for the innocent child's sake, but we must never forget that they have feelings like us. They love their children as we do ours. If we take them from them, they will come for a revenge. Every child is loved by the parents, irrespective of species. From that day on, the village of Ibonko never again traded in baby chimpanzees. The normalcy in the relationship between the chimps and humans started to exist again. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and share for more stories.